Commissioner Bush, thank you for taking time to talk with us today.
Great to be with you.
Let's start with the obvious question. Why do you want to be the next Texas Attorney General?
Well, Texans deserve better. We have an Attorney General that's facing criminal indictment, an FBI investigation looking into allegations of bribery and corruption. And I believe that Texans deserve a top advocate that's above reproach, not under indictment, focused on the job, going to defend our state against federal overreach, but also take on progressive mayors that are doing everything, for example, here in Austin, such as defunding the police. It's time for a new advocate, a change. Otherwise, Democrats will win this office if we nominate Ken Paxton once again.
I want to point out something you said about being under indictment. That was the case in 2018 when the Attorney General ran. So why challenge him now? Why in this moment?
Well, he's never really had a difficult political race. And I was encouraged by many in Texas to run against him 4 years ago. But I run to crisis. We were in the middle of Hurricane Harvey, and the governor tapped me to run the largest housing recovery in American history, the second most devastating storm in American history, and the most devastating storm in Texas history. So I came to public service. I came to Austin to serve others, not serve myself. And here we are 4 years later. We've turned a corner on Hurricane Harvey, but now we've got a top attorney facing these allegations. And if he's as innocent as he proclaims, then why doesn't he exercise his Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial by his peers? Because we all know the answer. He's guilty. And he's going to avoid this trial as long as he possibly can in these investigations, because he feels like he can fool the public here in Texas, because they may not know better that he's facing these legal challenges. So that's what my job is to do, is to talk about what I want to do in the agency, but also remind my fellow Texans, we can't have an indicted felon in a top office in our state.
You mentioned Hurricane Harvey. You did receive a lot of criticism as land commissioner about how Hurricane Harvey's recovery, that rebuilding of those homes, it was handled, the Alamo, the situation with veterans' homes during the pandemic. What do you want voters to know about the job you've done as land commissioner?
I'm proud of my track record of the last 7 years, whether it is responding to the challenges of our 1.8 million veterans as a veteran myself, whether it was building over 5,000 homes in addition to helping 70,000 Texans get back on their feet through a temporary housing program with FEMA. Additionally, taking care of the Alamo, the most precious gem of the state history, and making sure that we take back Alamo Street. And we will be announcing a very exciting announcement later in terms of what we're doing to preserve the church and the Long Bear. So when you look at my track record, I've been above reproach. I know it's a low threshold, but not indicted by a state court or under investigation. And I want to bring new ideas to the Attorney General's office to secure our border, back law enforcement, confront human trafficking, and take on areas of criminal law, which I know a lot of your viewers are experiencing firsthand here in the city of Austin, with an all-time high rate of violent crime and 4 homicides this past weekend. We need a change. We need an Attorney General that's getting tougher on crime, working with law enforcement, and backing our honorable officials that are keeping the watch.
But do you think there's still work to be done as far as the Land Commission is concerned when it comes to Harvey recovery and those veterans during the pandemic?
Absolutely. And I'm still on the watch, and I'm fully accountable for the great work that we do. But I'm going to also talk about all the great things that we have done on Hurricane Harvey, whether it is building and taking on corruption. Look, the next Attorney General is going to have to take on deadbeat mayors. And regretfully, the mayor of Houston was caught putting his hand in the cookie jar in Houston, trying to lend taxpayer funds to law firms that he was connected to. As Attorney General, I will take on public integrity cases here in Texas, regardless of party, and I will go after those that are stealing from the taxpayers' treasury account. And when it comes to pandemic relief, I'm the one who believes that Texans should make the choice as to whether or not their kids get masked in schools or whether or not you get required to take a vaccine. That choice should always be with the parent and with the individual, not with bureaucrats and politicians in Washington, D.C. and in Austin.
Both things that I will say the current Attorney General also would agree with you on those stances, though judges have ruled otherwise, especially here recently.
It depends on which case you're referring to, but what I remind my fellow Republicans is that if he's so successful on vaccination requirements, how is it that students in KDISD are still required to either get tested or vaccinated if they want to get back into the school? We were successful, not as a state, but other lawyers with respect to the requirement on businesses of over 100 employees, but we were unsuccessful on the mandate as it relates to healthcare workers. And I've got to tell you that when I talk to hospital leaders and healthcare providers here in Texas, they say they're having to let go of nurses because a lot of them choose, whether it's religious accommodations or otherwise, not to get vaccinated right at the time that Omicron is spiking and when we need a better delivery of healthcare resources in Texas. Let's leave these choices to businesses and to individuals rather than reactionary mandates and regulatory requirements.
You know, your campaign, I will say, though, is largely focused on the action that you want to take at the border. Talk to us about some of the things you want to do there.
Well, I couldn't be more proud to have the endorsement of the National Border Patrol Council. This is a union that represents the 19,000 agents. They know it'll be tough on dangerous border cartels that are not only smuggling narcotics and fentanyl, but also smuggling humans and making a lot of money with the human trafficking trade. They know that I'm already in the courthouse against the Biden administration in my capacity as land commissioner to compel the federal government to spend money on the so-called Trump wall. And they know that I'm already building the Texas wall in partnership with the governor's office. And yes, the people of Texas have said resoundingly that they want to defend our own border if the federal government is not going to do it. So I'm your border candidate. I have a national intelligence security background in the military with 10 years of service. I want to bring that to bear against the cartels and placing pressure on them and their organizations and their money interests here in the state of Texas.
You know, how then do you think we should stop it? Because it's not just the cartels, though that is a large portion of it. We are seeing other people seeking refuge in the United States. Any ideas on how we would address it and lower those numbers then?
The biggest magnet that when I talk to Border Patrol officials is enforcing the Remain in Mexico policy. This was the Trump era asylum requirement for those that are seeking political asylum, traditionally not from the country of Mexico itself, that apply for asylum in Mexico, not in the United States. Because if we do, we essentially have a catch and release program. And the coyotes, the smugglers, the cartels are very smart. They're telling migrants to plead for asylum. You'll get a notice to appear before an immigration judge over the course of 3 years, and then you can blend into the shadows. It's a traditional catch and release pattern that's resulting in this historic surge. So as Attorney General, I would have been investigating and holding the Biden administration accountable for the enforcement of the Remain in Mexico policy. Like I said, as land commissioner, I'm already building wall. This current Attorney General put out a press statement today saying that he's sending information packets to law enforcement officials and to landowners. Information packets? That's not enough. We need an Attorney General that's deploying all available legal resources, whether that's lawyers, paralegals, to help our honorable law enforcement officials that are enforcing criminal trespassing claims of folks coming across the border. We need to get serious. We need to get a sense of urgency. We just saw last year 100,000 deaths from opioid abuse with toxic cocktails that have fentanyl within them. And this is all stemming from the border. So we need to do a better job and get a sense of urgency.
You know, you talk about some of those legal actions that you would like to take in regards to the border, in regards to vaccine mandates and masks. One of your opponents, Judge Eva Guzman, points out that your law license was inactive from 2010 to 2020. So she and others are questioning your ability to legally, you know, go after, as you say, the Biden administration. What do you say to that?
Well, I've always maintained my bar license since 2003. When I graduated from the University of Texas in Austin. And in 2010, I deployed to Afghanistan for a tour of duty and did not actively practice law in the combat zone. When I came back, I ran for land commissioner, and I've been using my legal training every single day as land commissioner. My first lawsuit on my first day in office was preventing the shutdown of the oil and gas industry in the city of Denton. I'll continue those lawsuits, whether it's against the Obama administration, where I was successful on the banks of the Red River, Endangered Species Act issues, and others. And also, I mentioned my Biden lawsuit that I'm bringing under the National Impoundment Control Act. So I'm an active lawyer right now, and I'm ready to lead. I'm the only candidate in this race, whether it's the incumbent or the other challengers, that brings a private sector, a public sector, and a military executive experience. I know how to hire and fire good people. I'm going to be a great recruiter for young legal talent to come to Austin to serve causes greater than self.
Commissioner, give our viewers some final thoughts on why they should elect you, not someone else, this March.
Well, if you want somebody that's focused on the job, that's a family man, that's a Christian man, that's going to bring new values, conservative values to this agency and defend the state of Texas, but more importantly, instead of just filing lawsuits, but actually win in the courthouse, then I'm your candidate. I encourage your viewers to check out my website, my social media channels, to learn more about my specific plans to secure the border, to back law enforcement, to confront human trafficking, which is now one of the fastest growing crimes in our state. And then, of course, restoring accountability and integrity. That means taking on public corruption at all levels of government. That's what your next AG needs to do for our state to remain the greatest state and the greatest country the world has ever seen.
Mr. Bush, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Don't forget to vote.